Excellent, thank you. Give the spokespeople a round of applause. Thank you, spokespeople. I know that's not easy. Well, I know because this is what I do. If you guys want to know, just a little side note, I told you I was a college dropout. Do you want to know why I dropped out of college? That's exactly right. I was terrified. I was afraid. I was terrified of taking a public speaking course. So when I was 19 years old, I thought that would be a great life plan. Let's drop out of school because you're too afraid to speak in front of people. Do you think something changed? Yes. What do you think changed? I did it, right? Confidence, and you get that from doing it, and that's what we're going to start off with here. So we have our four main emotions, and it's important to identify this because you need to identify what emotions you're feeling in order to address the situations and to constructively deal with situations that you are in. And it's also really important to understand how you're coming across. I do want to share actually a little case study with you before we dive into the workbook. Because not maintaining control of yourself can harm your reputation. She's a crazy lady. And how do you think other people are going to react to her from now on?
Stay away.
Yeah, stay away. Walking on eggshells. Did she do anything to enhance her credibility? No. How about her trustworthiness? No. Having angry outbursts, not being able to control your emotions is a trust-eroding behavior. If people don't trust you, you're not going to be in the loop. You're not going to get opportunities, and it really can matter. So here's a woman who potentially has created one of those glass ceilings that I talked about this morning, and she won't even know why, because chances are no one's going to say anything to her. And she's in her mid-50s, and what is she going to say is the reason why she didn't get any more promotions. What reason will she give for being stuck now under that glass ceiling? I'm too old, or I'm a woman, or any one of these other things, right? Because it's easier, isn't it? It's easier to look at one of those outside factors rather than, oh, what, you mean I'm not getting promoted any higher because I can't control myself? Because I have angry outbursts? What's wrong with that? Okay, that's a blindness that you do not want to have. Okay, so it really does matter. So we're going to talk about the first one here on the bottom of page 37, and this is about fear. Okay, about being afraid. How to loosen up and overcome your fear of foolishness. Where are my great clips, ladies? Are they in here? They are not in here. That's okay. Because I have a good story about their CEO as it relates to this. So avoiding the fear of appearing foolish. Public speaking, as I said, that's one of those big fears that many people have, and I told you how it impacted my life, and I told you how I got over that. But maybe you don't want to do this kind of public speaking, but how about just speaking up in a meeting? How many of you have wanted to say something in a meeting? Maybe it was a staff meeting or some other type of meeting you've been in, and you didn't say anything because you didn't want to look dumb. You were afraid of how you would look. You were afraid that you were the only one who was thinking that. Have you ever been in a situation like that? This is how it shows up in the workplace, and this is going on all the time. It's going on somewhere right now in some meeting that somebody's sitting in. The meeting leader, maybe we'll say that, for example, tosses out an idea. And let's say I'm the meeting leader, and I toss out an idea, and I've got this great new idea. And I say, okay, team, this is the direction we're going. And you guys, some of you are sitting there thinking, I don't know. Is it Jennifer? What's your name?
Jean?
Oh, Jean, sorry. You were out of my range. You were out of my, sorry, Jean. And Jean is sitting there listening to my great idea, and she's thinking to herself, I don't know about this. This doesn't sound like such a great idea. In fact, it sounds like it would be putting us on a detour that we don't want to go. So Jean's sitting there thinking this herself, but she's looking around. What's everybody else in the meeting doing? Yes, the smile and nod. Watch out for the smile and nod. It is not a good sign. If you are in a team while people are just smiling and nodding, that's a bad sign. Because everyone's doing this. We do it automatically. I want you to pay attention to this the next time you are in a meeting. And especially if the person is making eye contact with you, pay attention to see if you automatically start bobbing your head. I do that. I'm like, I try to hold my head just in a neutral position, but I have this almost overwhelming desire to have to start doing this. But this is what you'll see all around. And then here's what will happen. I'll take the team on this detour, and then when it falls apart, as it usually does, or something bad happens, Jean's sitting there all, told you so. I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. But she didn't say anything. Why doesn't Jean say something? Why doesn't Jean? And Jean is just obviously just our little model here for people do this all the time. Why doesn't she speak up and say something? Fear of what? Lack of rejection. She might be wrong. Right? That self-doubt could come creeping in. I have been this person. And I've had to scale back on being this person because I usually, in my past, I've had no problem sit in a meeting. And in fact, I almost would find ways to say everybody was wrong because I'm just a know-it-all. Such a bad know-it-all, I really am. So I've had to scale back on that. But I have kind of weighed things out nowadays before I open my mouth. And not too long ago, I was in a meeting with about 25 people. And somebody in the meeting tossed out an idea. And everybody around the table was like, oh yeah, we should do that. That's a great idea. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, this is a terrible idea. It's just a bad idea. I didn't say anything right away, simply because I know myself well enough. I mean, I don't always want to make a big deal about everything. I just don't want to be that person anymore. But it bothered me. So after the meeting, I talked to somebody else who was knowledgeable about this area, or this road we were going down. And the person I spoke to said, no, you're on the right track. And that's how I just asked. I said, am I on the right track? I have a concern about this. What do you think? And she said, no, you're on the right track. I think you've got a good basis here if you want to. If you decide, if you want to make a statement about it, if you want to put your energy into this. So I had some, I got a little validation there. And then I got some backup, meaning backup from, previous, historical documents or mission statements, different, whatever you can get your hands on. So when the next meeting came around the next month, I was the person, it came up again as a topic, and I said, excuse me, I have a concern. And I laid it out. What do you think happened after that meeting? Because in the first meeting, everybody was doing this. What do you think happened after that second meeting after I spoke up? Yes, at least half of the group came up to me afterwards and said, I'm so glad you said something. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, no, you weren't. No, I didn't say that. You were smiling and nodding. So watch out there. So my point about this, these are the typical everyday situations you're going to find yourself in the workplace. You have a concern. You don't want to say anything. You don't want to look like the only one. I can guarantee you, you will never be the only one if you have a concern about it. So just say it in a respectful way. Okay, here's my little story I have about the CEO of Great Clips. I was listening to I was at a conference, a different type of a conference, and the CEO of Great Clips was one of the speakers at the conference. And she was talking about this thing called the imposter syndrome. Have any of you heard about this term, the imposter syndrome? It's amazing. The imposter syndrome was a phenomenon that was discovered in the 1970s by a couple of researchers. And what it is, it's the inability to internalize accomplishments or internalize achievements. And it almost exclusively impacts women, although some men have this too, but very few. It almost exclusively impacts women. And no matter how high you go on the ladder or how much achievement or how much success you've achieved, there's always this lurking fear, this lurking notion that it was a mistake, that you don't deserve it, that someone's going to find out that you shouldn't be there, in there, whatever that position was. That was just a fluke. That's what this is. So here I am at this conference, and Rhoda Olson, who's the CEO of Great Clips, she happens to live in Minneapolis, where I'm from, and she's talking about this. Now, she's the CEO of Great Clips, and she's been the CEO since, I think, 2007. And this was just a few years ago. She said still to this day, in CEO since 2007, on the executive team since, like, the 90s, a long time, that to that day, when she sat in a board meeting or a meeting of all the executives, she was terrified that someone was going to call her out and say, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. Who let you in here? And I thought, wow, if Rhoda Olson feels that way, no wonder I feel that way, because I have felt that way. Haven't you ever felt that way? Worry, do I have what it takes? Was it just a mistake? Was it a one-time thing? And there was a lot of power in that. So what do you do with that, though? Well, there's not really any cure for it. The best cure is action. Action wipes out all fear. If you want to get rid of your fear, take action. It takes a lot of courage to make that first step. But there's the only thing you can do. Feel the fear and do it anyway. There's so much power in sharing our stories. And there's so much power in letting other people know what's going on with us. Because Rhoda Olson shared that story, and I totally related. About a year later, I shared this story, Rhoda's story, and then my own story, how it relates to me. And I was at a conference, and I was speaking, and in the front row, a woman was sitting there, and she was in tears. And after I spoke, I talked to her, what's going on? She had run a successful business for 30 years with her husband. Her and her husband built a successful business, and she lived like that every day, not feeling sure of herself, always second-guessing herself, thinking it was just a mistake, someone's going to find out. And she didn't know what it was, though, so she just thought she was crazy, right? She just thought, what's wrong with me? I put words to what she felt. It was a powerful day. I put words to what she felt. And so that's one of the important things of why we have to share our stories and let other people know what's going on. Instead of this fear of being perfect, right? This fear of always having to do everything just right and having to look perfect. It's so important that we let other people know what's really going on, because there's a lot of power in that, and that can be freedom for other people. So my encouragement for you on that, about that fear, is just feel the fear and do it anyway. You're not going to be the only one. Be respectful, have your facts, and put it out there. Okay, that's all I have to say on that. Let's talk about, at the top of page 38, stress.